So we're in chapter 1 of your culinary class. I'm going to call it culinary class instead of food class. It's going to be your cooking class. So, and we're going to start on section 1.2 with kitchen safety. So we went over the cultural influences and such, and that was pretty quick. But now we need to know more about kitchen safety. So when you think about kitchen safety, what do you think about? You think like, oh, I don't want to cut myself, and then you think I don't want to get sick on my food, right? Those two things that have too much bacteria. What is kitchen safety about? And this is what we're gonna go into here. So basically, it starts out kitchen safety. It says here is central in most home. Groceries are stored and meals are prepared and life stories are shared and memories are made in the kitchen. But kitchen safety cannot be overemphasized as a key element of culinary life skills. So it's important to know how to safely use food and preparation to maintain a safe kitchen environment and to keep food safe for consumption. We need to keep our food safe. If we're going to serve somebody food, we don't want to hurt them in any way, do we? Or we don't want to hurt ourselves while we're preparing food. So let's go over the tips and techniques here quickly. You have this here, but a lot of these things you need to know just in daily life. So, and some of them are just tips. So when you have tips going on. Safety tips. The first part says to be organized. That's the first step. And have a place for everything. Keep your drawers and cupboards closed. Don't leave all your cupboards open all the time. You know, and I like the part where it says use a step stool. I have a step stool I just bring in whenever because I've fallen off chairs. Putting, a chair or a folding chair up or a box and I'll fall out, and I don't need to fall these days, So it's important to invest into a sturdy step stool so you can reach those top cupboards. Make sure you have a fire extinguisher in your kitchen. Very important. And know where the fire extinguisher is and how to use it. Here's a part that says respond quickly. Know what to do when a problem arises. So to wipe up spilled liquids or foods, immediately wipe them up. Don't leave them on the floor. You know what happens if you don't? You're going to slide and fall. You've spilled water on the floor or something, someone's going to come in and slip and fall and maybe get drastically hurt. So wipe up spilled liquids or foods. Broken glass? What do you do with broken glass? First of all, if you take the glass, make sure you put it in the garbage. When you put it in the garbage, wrap it in something like newspaper, or paper towels or something so that somebody that's taking out the garbage or deciding to push their hand in the garbage is not going to get drastically cut. And then if it's on the floor or wherever it is, you have the little tiny pieces of glass. Well, they can really cause problems if you're running around barefoot. So take a damp paper towel and clean up those little tiny particles of glass. And then if you get cut or burned, make sure you treat it. Stop and go treat it. Make sure you treat it immediately. Don't just keep going, right? So grease fire, let's see. Right here. Grease fire, a grease fire. If you have a fire that's grease, say you have a bunch of bacon grease or some kind of grease and it gets turned into a big fire. Number one thing about a grease fire, never throw water on it. Throw water on it, you'll make it into a bigger fire. So a grease fire, you can throw baking soda on it. Be careful throwing anything on it, really, but putting baking soda and sometimes salt just at the base of the grease fire, put salt and it will calm the grease fire down. Baking soda is a good thing to have. I have it in my refrigerator all the time because it takes the smell out of my refrigerator, those musty smells away, but it also is really good for things like grease fire. So remember, grease fire, do not put water on a grease fire. Knife safety. Always use a cutting board. So I always keep my cutting board out and I make sure before you use the cutting board to wash it, right? To make sure that it's not contaminated. So knife safety is cutting away from you, cutting away from yourself. Cut away from yourself, never cut towards you. When you have a used knife, lay that knife in a very obvious place. Don't stick it in the bunch of dishes, you know, there so somebody can get cut, or put it someplace where somebody's going to get cut, like put it somewhere where somebody's hand's going to get cut on it or something. So put it in an obvious place. Do not place it in a sink full of dishes, and make sure you wash those knives separately to avoid accidental injuries. Wash them separate. Be careful, especially with sharp knives. Stovetop and oven safety. So make sure the handles of your pots are turned in, not the handles out, because somebody a little kid or a dog or whatever can come up and jump and push the handle off, and then all the hot fluid is gonna, that happened to me one time. I was cooking mushrooms, and I had butter and everything on there, and then I had the handle sticking off, and I turned around, I bumped the handle, and the handle caused the whole pot to dump on my arms, and I still have scars from that. So it's important that the handles of pots be turned in. Cooking utensils are not extended over the burners. What happens if you have the handles of the pots and they're extended over another burner and you're cooking on there? It's going to cause that handle to melt, and then you'll try to grab that handle and you'll get burned. So never cooking utensils not extended over the burners. Don't keep recipes in hot pads, you know, keep them away from burners, you know, keep anything that can catch on fire away from the burners. So tilt lids away for steam. So if you have a pot and it's steaming, go to the opposite side and flip the steam out away from you. Always use a pot holder though, you know, and flip it because it's gonna be hot. Turn it away and have the steam go away from you, not in your face, you know. So you can get a bad steam. Steam can really burn your face badly. So whenever you have lids with steam in, and make the steam go away from you on that far end of the lid. Tilt the lid up away from you. Use pans that are the correct size for the burners. That's important. Not put a tiny pan on a big, huge burner, you know, and make sure the lids fit. It's important that we buy lids that fit, right? Our pans. Otherwise, a lid can flip off easy and burn us, right? So make sure you have well-padded, dry pot holders, not wet pot holders. Don't grab a wet towel to use taking something out of the oven. Use well-padded, dry pot holders so you don't burn your fingers and hands. Electric safety. This part, do not place extension cords under rugs. Well, why not? For one thing, you can trip on that rug, but another thing is that under the rug can condensation, and it's rubbing against that rug, and water can cause you to have get electrocuted. So never put extension cords under rugs, because it could actually the rug can burn a hole in the extension cord as it rubs there and cause you to have electrical problem and maybe even get electrocuted. So, and when you're plugging in appliances, you know, make sure that your hands are dry. You don't have wet hands. You didn't get out of the shower. Even getting out of the shower and plugging in a hairdryer is not good when you're all wet. So never use plugs when you're wet, because you can cause electrical problems, possibly have electrocution problems, I should say. Anyway, always disconnect electrical appliances that you're not using, like a blender, you know, or a crock pot, you know, unplug them. Don't keep them plugged in. So that's a lot about safety there, safety tips and techniques. Let's go on and see what other safety things they have. Food safety. Well, right here, let's look at this picture here. Cut away from yourself. See how she's cutting away from herself with her knife, cutting away from herself. Turn handles of pots and pans away from the front of the stove. It's not pictured, but I like that the way that picture is. So now let's go into food safety here. Food safety, we're going to talk about foodborne illnesses. You can get sick, you know, from what you eat. Why? Because we have viruses and bacteria and, you know, all kinds of diseases that can be transferred by food, right? So the first part here talks about bacteria. There's some useful bacteria. In fact, in blue cheese, bacteria gives it a flavor and it's good to eat. And some bacteria live inside of our gastrointestines, to help us, to aid us in our digestion. So there are many kinds of bacteria are good. But then there's many bacteria, even though they're odorless, you can't smell them, you can't taste them, they have no visible, you can't see them, but they can contaminate food. There's such bacteria that we know that have caused food poisoning many a time. Salmonella and E. coli, can cause serious illnesses. So when foods are not handled properly, especially meats, eggs, and dairy fruits and vegetables, that's about all of it, they can be a source of harmful bacteria. So what do we need to do? Make sure that we are very clean and that we don't have a chance of contaminating. So it's important to know. Going on to preventing contamination, let's talk about preventing contamination. So anyway, it says, well, before we do that, it says millions of Americans suffer from foodborne illnesses. And so a foodborne illness includes symptoms like headaches and stomach aches and stomach cramps, diarrhea, fever, severe vomiting. They could all be, caused by food poisoning, right? And on to the symptoms can begin as early as 30 minutes after you eat. Some people get drastically sick. It's a half hour after you eat, and others can come on 72 hours after you eat. That's, a couple days later. So it's important. And it can be especially dangerous for infants and elderly people and people that have a compromised immune system. So talking about contamination. So it's important to know preventing contamination. Talk about preventing. How do we prevent contamination? So it's important to know how to handle food, whether we're preparing the food, whether we're serving the food, or whether we're storing the food. We always have to be aware of, are there bacteria going to get into the food? Are we doing it properly? So number one thing that they talk about here is personal sanitation, personal cleanliness, right? So of course, even in the hospital and as a nurse and going through all these, the basic way to prevent bacteria spread and viruses from spreading is to wash your hands. And so whenever you go to the restroom, make sure you wash your hands. I know Papa he went to a restroom in Washington, D.C., and there was two men there. One man came out after he went to the restroom and was going out, and the other man said, "Are you going to wash your hands?" And Papa he was washing his hands. He washes his hands all the time. But he thought, sometimes people, you need to wash your hands, especially if you're working with food. So wash your hands and to wash them properly, using soap and scrub them for at least 20 seconds. Count to 20. 1, 2, 3. Count to 20 seconds. And make sure you scrub your fingers and nails. That's important. Another thing is removing jewelry, too, to scrub the jewelry or removing jewelry. And of course, a wedding ring, you probably wouldn't, but if you're wearing jewelry on every single hand and you're a cook or cooking or you are working with food, it might be removing some of your jewelry, might be important. A towel, going on to towels, because towels can present bacteria. So use one towel for just drying hands, clean hands, right? And of course, that towel, you don't use it for, other things like drying dishes, You used it for drying your hands, don't use it for drying dishes. And so on to touching your face and touching your nose and such, and then your hair hanging down. So when you're preparing food, it's good to tie your hair back. So it's really gross when you get hair in your food, isn't it? Whenever I got a piece of hair in a food, I would not eat it. I was like, done. It just grossed me out. And so don't be touching your face and, these things, putting your hands in your mouth or whatever, and then working with food. So I like the part where it says, don't comb your hair in the kitchen. I like that. Don't comb your hair in the kitchen. We have hair in the kitchen. Or don't comb your dog's hair in the kitchen, huh? Right? Or pet your dog and then don't wash your hands. So, oh, another thing it talks about apron. So aprons are really good. I think of aprons because you don't want to get anything on your clothes, but really it protects the food from those. You've been outside or you've been working in the garden, or maybe you're with your dog, or like I said before, and you have dog hairs on you or something. An apron is really good to put over you when you're working, so that contaminated things on your clothing won't get into the food. So that's important. Another thing, if you cough or sneeze, go away from the food. If you need to cough or sneeze, step away from the food and then wash your hands. So we know that. You should know that. Wash your hands well. And if you're sick, don't work with food that day. Say, well, I got the flu. I'm going to go cook a meal for somebody. Don't do that. So, and when you're tasting things, do not take the spoon and lick on the spoon and put it back in. We know that, right? And also do not lick your fingers and stick your fingers in food. Not a good way if you're going to be preparing food. So, practicing kitchen sanitation is as important as practicing personal sanitation. Keep your work area clean. So let's talk about kitchen sanitation. This is proper food storage, but we're going to go back when we talk about refrigerators there. So I'm not going to interrupt. We're going to talk about proper kitchen safety, or I should say kitchen, how kitchen cleanliness is important. So that's part of safety. So kitchen, do not use the same utensils for raw and cooked food, right? Do not use the same utensils or cutting board for both raw and cooked foods, especially when working with meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy. So when you're using a cutting board and you're cutting raw food, you're cutting raw chicken, or cutting meat, raw meat, or even dairy, cutting dairy. I think of cheese. I can cut cheese, that'll be fine. Well, maybe not. So if you're cutting on the cutting board, make sure you wash the cutting board or use a different cutting board before you put on, some other food and contaminate it, like maybe fruits and vegetables. So always wash your fruits and vegetables. So using the same utensils or cutting boards could cause cross-contamination. So what is cross-contamination? It occurs when bacteria or other contaminants are transferred from one food to another through the use of unclean utensils, dishes, or other items by combining contaminated food with uncontaminated food. So we really want to prevent cross-contamination. It's an important thing. It says to prevent cross-contamination, periodically wash your counters. Make sure your counters are clean. Use a disinfectant cleaner to wash your counters, or soap and water, dish soap, and cutting boards with chlorine type cleaners, bleach, to help kill black bacteria. Look on your cleaners, you see, does it kill black bacteria? That's the main thing we want to do. So it's antibacterial. So, and sanitize the sink and the faucet area. Faucet area is very important because you're always touching the faucet area, aren't you? And you could recontaminate your hands after you wash them on the faucet. So it's important that the faucet be clean. Do not use dropped utensils. If you drop on the floor, or dropped dish towels, get a dish towel, put it in the wash. If you drop a utensil, don't pick it up and use it, right? Get out a clean utensil or a fresh towel. So, and as for garbage, garbage, when you're disposing of garbage, make sure you empty the trash, they say, daily. Why? Because bacteria grow in your garbage cans and they can cause diseases. So, take your garbage. I always take out my garbage right after I do it. There's a big meal, put it out there, because that if you leave it there overnight, you're going to have stinking problems, aren't you? So now let's talk about a different subject. It has to do with bacteria, but it's about temperature. So certain temperatures bacteria really like, and certain temperatures they don't like. So when you're talking about bacteria, bacteria like the temperatures between 40 degrees Fahrenheit, that's a nice, kind of a cool degrees, 40 degrees to 140 degrees. They like those temperatures and they live in those temperatures. So you want to be outside of those temperatures when you're dealing with food, right? So 40 degrees, here we got 40 degrees to 140 degrees is a range known as the temperature danger zone. Danger zone, if the food's in that danger zone between 40 and 140, which is room temperature, right? Then you're in the danger zone for getting bacteria. So safe temperatures, hot foods. Hot foods is good. The hot food that if you're cooking meat reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit. It's good to have a thermometer, meat thermometer especially, that okay, this meat's cooked enough. It's reached 165 degrees Fahrenheit at least. Of course, 140 would be okay, but 165 would definitely destroy any bacteria or any such viruses and stuff on the meat. So 165 degrees. So safe temperatures are let's go on here. I said be sure dense food is steaming throughout. If you have a crock pot full on the outside or even in the microwave, and the inside is not cooked yet. So make sure it's all been cooked. When reheating soups or sauces, boil them for 1 minute to ensure food safety. So if you're going to have food, put it in, don't just warm it up, go ahead and when you boil it for 1 minute, then it will kill any bacteria. So boiling things does. It says boil for 1 minute. Food must also be kept constantly cold until it's ready to be served or cooked. So when you're thawing frozen food thaw it in the refrigerator. I used to do that. I used to take a thaw out of, take frozen meat, like I was gonna have chicken or something. I take it out of the freezer and put it in the sink. Actually, my mother-in-law used to do that. So I thought, So I take it out and put it in the sink. But I better be ready, because if it's in the sink too long and it's sitting too long, it can draw bacteria. So better than that, take out the freezer stuff that you want to thaw out and put them in the refrigerator to thaw. So that refrigerator is cold enough that it's not going to produce bacteria, right? Serve cold, perishable foods as soon as possible, and do not allow any perishable food to stand at room temperature for more than 2 hours. So what's that saying? You don't leave food out for more than 2 hours. Even pizzas and stuff, you shouldn't leave them out all day. Put them in the refrigerator. Bacteria can get into food, and in 2 hour period of time is the limit to leaving food set out, right? Now let's see. It says most prone to causing foodborne illnesses are meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy. And be especially careful when handling these foods to make sure they are kept at appropriate temperatures at all times. When I think meat, poultry, that's chicken, fish, that's all kind of meat, eggs, make sure that you, and dairy, make sure that you put them at the right temperatures. They go in the refrigerator if they go in the refrigerator, right? This part about buffet style is pretty important. When you talk about a buffet, have you ever gone to a buffet and have you watched what they're doing? Well, hopefully they were doing things right. Some buffets, I really go like, who's really putting this buffet together? But buffets are a breeding ground for bacteria if you don't do buffets right. So it's important. Here it talks about place buffet food in shallow dishes so that they can be heated uniformly or chilled and replaced. Not, a shallow dish is easier, so they could heat them easier all the way through, not the middle be cold. And do not cross-contaminate by combining food that's been sitting out with fresh food. Have you ever seen that? When you have this bowl of food and then somebody comes and pours in fresh food in the old food? Not a good thing to do, can cause bacteria because that food's been sitting out. And so the next time you do the same thing, they keep pouring more food into the old container. No, they should change the whole container. You know, that's the important part in food serving and a buffet. Change the container, not just pouring clean, hot food into an old platter of food, right? So let's see. Let's go on here. We're talking about the buffet, okay? Chafing dishes. So, you know, it's important that you have a chafing dish. What's a chafing dish? It's a dish that has heat underneath it so that it can keep it warm. So if you're at a professional buffet and you look and they have heat going on underneath their buffet, that's a good thing, you know, so they know that they're keeping those dishes hot, you know, and they're not having something sit out for hours and hours, right? Refrigerated. The refrigerated food, you should actually put the refrigerated food on ice with a container of ice underneath it if you're doing it. So you can keep it nice and cool. So that's important for a buffet. Also, bag lunches. Let's talk about bag lunches. Not just buffets, but our lunches. Now, so we have a lunch bag. You should have an insulated bag that's insulated that keeps, you know, the cool in, and you can put in, you know, a little frozen pack in there if you have it. That will keep it so it's cool. Also, the insulated bottles, or as you put forth and you're going to bring cold food, you put it in these insulated bottles of food and preheat, you know, or thermoses to keep things warm. Very important. The most important thing I think here that talks about is this last part. So if you're going to wrap raw meats, say that you're going to do a barbecue and you're bringing some raw meats like hamburgers and such, and it says to wrap those raw meats carefully and put them in a sealed container at the bottom, you know, and so that they stay cold. You know, make sure those raw meats stay cold if you're going to even put them on the barbecue. Don't just throw them in, but put them in a sealed container. And make sure if you're on a picnic or everything, bring paper towels and bring some antibacterial sanitizer with you so everybody can wash their hands, right? So that you can wash your hands when you're feeding people. So, on to dishwashing. A lot of people now have dishwashers, but some people don't. And many cultures don't have dishwashers. So, what's important is that you continually wash and rinse, progressing towards the direction of storage. So it says, first step in dishwashing, you're going to rinse, then wash, then rinse. You're going to start by scraping and pre-rinsing. So you're going to pre-rinse it. First of all, scrape the food into the garbage. Then you're going to pre-rinse the food, and from that point, you're going to wash it, put it in a dish pan with soapy water, you know, and washing it with soap, dish soap, right? And then washing them. In the process of washing them, you wash certain things first. This will probably be a test question. So when you're washing dishes, which things should you wash first? Here's the order: glasses first and cups. Then your flatware, that'd be your silverware. Flatware and plates and bowls and plates and bowls and flatware, but they went first of all the glasses, then the flatware, then onto the plates and bowls. Washing these in there because these are going from the cleaner things to the dirtier things. And the last thing to put in would be the pots and pans because they're greasy and they'll cause your water to become very greasy, right? And so then you rinse them all in hot water afterwards. If you have a second sink, it says, or a dish tub, you can actually fill it with clear hot water and dump them in that hot water. I've seen that, especially at camping sites, that they do that. We don't have one, but to make sure that they're rinsed off. You know what? If you washed it in soap, the soap's going to be on the dishes. And if the dish is dry with the soap on it, you can actually get sick by some of the types of the soap. The soap can make you sick. So especially if it's a lot of dish soap. So it's good to rinse off before putting them away. I like this part. It says you can air dry dishes. It's good to air dry dishes, it says, except Certain dishes like glasses and cups and silverware, flatware, they get spotted if you don't wipe them. So it's good to wipe those items. And put them in the dishwasher usually basically will dry them pretty good without getting the spots on them. So let's go on. Tips and techniques, dishwashing, time savers, and helpful hints. What are helpful hints about dishwashing? You think, oh, this should be easy. Well, let's find out. First of all, it says to use a mat in the sink as a cushion because you can chip and break your dishes. So it's good to have a mat in the sink, so if they do fall in the sink, it's not going to break. So also it says to dry upside down. Of course, you want to dry cups and bowls upside down because all the water will drip out of them, right? This part here where it says, for sanitary purposes, store glasses with rims up. Huh, I never knew that. So I guess it's important, because if you put them in a cupboard, the cupboard might be dirty, and then you're putting it on the dirtiness of the rim. So it says rims up with the cups. And stored glass pieces should not touch each other because there might be vibrations and they might break them. I never knew that either. So going on to hot pans. Sorry, I have this going in the back, some noise here. Do not put hot pans or dishes in cold water or very cold dishes in hot water because this temperature change, a drastic temperature change can cause the metal pans to warp and also glass dishes to break. So you don't want to take something right out of the hot oven and stick it into some cold water. You can hurt the pan, especially if it's a glass. You can break the glass. And that's happened before. Or even taking things that are really hot out of the dishwasher, and sticking them into cold water can break them. So soak dishes soiled with eggs, milk, cheese, cereal, and flour in cold water. So these things, if you have eggs, milk, cheese, cereal, and they're all, the dishes are stuck with those things on them, you can soak them in cold water. But use hot water when you're soaking dishes with grease and sugar. That's a good tip. Remove your excess grease with a paper towel before washing your pans. So you're cooking bacon and you need to get rid of the bacon grease. Let it sit for a while till it's cool, and then take a towel and paper towel. Make sure you have a paper towel you can throw away or a paper napkin, and basically scrape off the grease before you wash the pan. Because if you have the grease going down your sink, you can cause a sink to be plugged up with grease. Remove burned food from cookware by partially filling it with water and adding 1 teaspoon of baking soda and boiling it gently. Good tip. Never knew that. So you can basically take a pan, that's caked with burnt stuff on it, and then you can partially fill it with water and boil it there. And as it's doing that, put some baking soda in it, and then the burnt stuff will come off. And pour out the water, remove any loose food. If necessary, repeat the process until all the burned food has been removed. Good tip. This is a great tip. Keep sharp knives separate from other dishes. We went over that. Check instructions on small appliances before immersing them in water. So don't take your whole blender and stick it in water, or the bottom part with the electrical part and stick it into water. You'll probably break it and you could have problems. And make sure you unplug anything that's around water. Hang dish towels and dishcloths neatly on a towel rack in a designated area. So it's good to have a towel rack there. Dish towels used for just dishes, and then have a hand towel in the bathroom, right? Or a hand towel somewhere where you're using a hand towel, and put them and hang them, on, so they're not used to wipe something on the floor. If you do, make sure you put it in the laundry. So anyway, those are safety tips. So here's some questions you can answer on your own. I'm not going to go over them, but we went over just to know. You need to know these safety tips. We're going to get through the safety tips, and then we're going to get into a more fun area. But it's important to know these things, especially if you're the cook of the house, right? And you're preparing everybody's food. You want to be making it in a safe way.